Good day, Facebook and YouTube. How we doing? Sorry, not on YouTube once again. A little bit more technical difficulties. Hopefully, that I'm able to get those fixed and be able to be on YouTube next year. Welcome back to Shaw's 10 Talk, where I, David Shaw, will be bringing you the pulse of Big Ten football throughout the season. It's episode 2. We were supposed to be climbing into teams 12 through 7, but obviously the Big Ten had other plans today and they wanted to ruin my video by breaking some news and dropping the hammer on Michigan today. So a little bit about all of that. So Michigan was shown a 10-year, Jim Harbaugh was shown a 10-year show cause, first off, and Michigan's punishments in the NCAA COI ruling. Michigan receives a significant fine, expected to be more than 20 million. It's actually going to come out to be about 30 million. What that's going to be, it's technically not really getting paid right now. It's going to be a loan, I guess, kind of, or an advancement, I guess. It's more going to get paid from the postseason money. Last year, each team received between 12 and 13 million. That's going to be part of it. Then the actual budget goes into about like 10% of the budget. So there's so that's a perceived 20, and then I guess there's going to be some other fees and stuff added and tacked onto it. So it's going to wind up getting to close to around $30 million by the end of the whole said and done. And it it's disappointing on that end, I guess, but it's nice because it's basically just a slap on the wrist. The school already suspended Sharon Moore for 2 games, but the COI felt that it was necessary to suspend Sharon Moore next season. According to the write up about that, that is because they gave him a 2-year show cause. So, because the one game next year is in the second year of the show cause, they felt that them suspending him another game next year was fine enough. So, altogether, that means Jim Harbaugh for this has now been suspended 3 games. Sharon Moore has now been suspended. Well, by the end of this, will be suspended 4 games for the 5 games actually for this entire process. So, um, the other let's see, 25% reduction in football official visits during the 25-26 season. So a quarter of the official visits go bye-bye this season. That hurts because a lot of Michigan recruits that's where a lot of their signings come from, is from the official visits, especially during the late season, early spring window where the visits really pick up. A 14-week prohibition on recruiting communications in the football program during the probation period. Not I've seen multiple things on that one. I'm actually kind of confused. I need to do more homework before I really get to talking more about that one. It sounds like during the normal recruiting where you're allowed to talk to yeah, right. Wow, wow. Talk. You're on live. When you're talking to the recruits, and when it's allowed to, when you're allowed to be talking to the recruits, there's a certain I think week of that, and I don't know that one very well either. But apparently, during the entire next 4 years, it's 14 weeks total, is how I understand that. I could be wrong on that. Connor Stallions has shown an 8-year show cause penalty, basically ending his college coaching career. Jim Harbaugh is given a 10-year show cause on top of the 4-year, so that won't begin until August 7th. The 10-year won't begin until August 7th, 2028. At the conclusion of the 4-year, as I already said from the previous case. So again, not that big of a deal because he was never coming back to college football anyways. Denard Robinson, a 3-year show cause which means he's basically done in college recruiting as well. And that's the gist of it. A huge money fine. And so a lot of people, including myself, are like, so where's this hammer that I kept hearing about? That's it. My opinion of the whole thing is this. The NCAA shot their load back in early in November of 2023, and they ran their mouth, and they got caught with their knickers down. They talked a big game, and they wanted to do a smear campaign, and they got caught. They got caught with their knickers down. Michigan, this whole thing isn't about quote unquote sign stealing. The punishment today is about Connor Stallions. And let me further explain it myself. If this was about quote unquote cheating, the punishments would have been a lot more. But it's not. Why? Because they didn't have proof. Oh, I read the report. I know what the report says. It says a lot. None of it's proof. If it was proof, then where is it? Where's the proof? New information as of about an hour ago. That's why Michigan's appealing the whole thing. So it's all getting appealed, and we'll see where this goes from here. Quite frankly, I'm on both sides of the fence with it. I kind of want it to go away, and this is a good way of getting it to go away. On the other hand, if they feel that the punishment, as light as it is still outside the preview of what it should be, then they should be able to. They should be able to. The interesting part about this is at the very tail end of the 75-page report, it says that Tim Smith and the old coach Petridge, who got fired before the Maryland game, so defamed, his name ran through the mud, lost his career, and Tim Smith, a longtime booster, were found to be cleared of all wrongdoing in this. That's very interesting to me because and oh, by the way, Tim Smith, the booster, he was the one being named as the infamous Uncle T, according to Bro Ohio, who some believed funded the Stallions' operation, says he was fully and unequivocally exonerated by the NCAA report released today, and per statement from his lawyers. I believe there's going to be some people that are going to need to start lawyering up. That's my surmise on that, because I'm not really understanding how you fire a guy, run another guy's name through the mud, and you just think that exonerating him through a statement is going to be enough. So I think there's going to be some more coming from this. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes from here, because I don't believe it's done. I don't believe it's done in any manner. I think more can come down, especially if Michigan does appeal the sanctions and everything. But and once again, in the 75-page report, the NCAA found no evidence that Jim Harbaugh or Michigan coaches directed or had knowledge of low-level staffers Connor Stallions' alleged off-campus scouting operation. Note as well, the Big Ten also found no evidence. Just very interesting. So a 75-page report comes out. It says a lot of words. It says a lot of mean things, has a lot of accusations. But again, nothing proving anything. So at the end of the day, Michigan's going to get fined $20 to $30 million, which is, at least they got that from that instead of what Ohio State got against Michigan last year. But nonetheless, that's about it on the sign stealing thing, and unless something else new comes out. Um, and I'll be clear to you right now. I am a Michigan fan, so I'm trying to be as objective as possible. I'm not trying to give too much of the Michigan side of things. I'm trying to give it straight down the road, straight down the middle of the road, and just be as objective as possible. Um, I don't think that this is done in any passion, in any sort of the fashion that like most fans want it to be. I think all sides of this right now, Michigan's way too excited. Ohio State and Michigan State are losing their mind and they're sad and they're upset and they're ticked off for absolutely no reason at all. First off, I think you need to find some perspective on some things and maybe actually just realize that it's a football game and that it's sports and there are more important things, and I'll just move on from that. But so I had another topic to begin this podcast right here, but I think I'm just going to move right on along, and we'll do that topic next time. And let's see, but obviously I have to scroll through here to get to that point, and so there it is. Now to the preseason breakdowns of my 12 through 7 teams on Shaw's TED Talk. Let's go. Number 12, Wisconsin. Last year, the Badgers went 5-7 overall, 3-6 in the Big Ten. Offensively, the Badgers scored 22.6 points per game and gained 350.3 yards per game. That was good for 11th and 13th, respectively, in the Big Ten last year. Defensively, the Badgers gave up 23 points per game and 342 yards per game. That was good for 12th and 9th, respectively, last year. Wisconsin's unit rankings are as follows: depth of roster, 10th, coaching, 14th, offense, 11th, defense, 10th, quarterback, 14th, running back, 10th, wide receiver, tight end room, 14th, offensive line, 6th, defensive line, 14th, linebackers, 8th, secondary, 9th, special teams, 14. The Badgers missed a bowl for the first time since 2001. Luke Fickell's offense ranked 99th in SP plus, and the defense wasn't much better. Luke Fickell is going to have to win at least 7 games this year, or he's going to be on the hot seat, if not fired, going into next season. You can mark that down right now. For 2025, questions still remain: a significant overhaul of the coaching staff and some notable changes to the roster via the transfer portal, led by QB transfer from Maryland, Billy Edwards Jr., who threw for 2,800 yards last season. The defense struggled last season, particularly with generating pressure on the quarterback. The defense does return 8 starters from last year. That could be good or bad. The good is obvious. That is a lot of returning players, which sometimes means good production coming back. But the bad is also a possible scenario here. Those 8 didn't produce anything last year, so which is more likely? According to the Badgers Wire, the defense coaches are very excited for the prospects this season. They are really high on the secondary, where they returned 3 or 4 starters from last year. So one would think much should be expected from them. The schedule does the Badgers no favors in 2025. The Badgers face Alabama and my number 2, 3, and 4 teams in my Big Ten rankings: Michigan, Ohio State, and Oregon. Indiana and Illinois, only one of those games is at home. The Illini come to Madison November 22nd. My key game for the Badgers is huge. It could be for bowl eligibility, to keep the Axe, and for Luke Fickell to keep his job. That game is November 29th at Minnesota. Can Fickell and his transfers turn Wisconsin around, or does the schedule crush them? I am on the latter. I think the schedule is the hardest in the Big Ten this season. Wisconsin's win total is 5.5. I have the Badgers losing that game against the Gophers, making them 5-7 on the season. I think this one is tough because I do believe the roster is improving, but another 5-win season and back-to-back non-bowl seasons may mean the end of Fickell in Madison. Moving on to number 11, Minnesota last season was 8-5 overall and 5-4 in the Big Ten. Offensively scored 26 points per game and gained 337 yards per game. 12th and 9th, respectively, in the Big Ten. Defensively gave up 16 points per game and 285 yards per game. 4th and 3rd, respectively, in the Big Ten. Minnesota's unit rankings, depth of roster, 12th, Coaching, 8th. Offense, 12th. Defense, 8th. Quarterback, 16th. Running back, 3rd. Wide receiver, tight end room, 15th. Offensive line, 12th. Defensive line, 7th. Linebackers, 13. Secondary, 10. Special teams, 12th. PJ Fleck returns for his unbelievably 9th season with the Golden Gophers. Cannot believe it's been that long already. Feels like it was just yesterday he entered into Minneapolis and was leaving Central Michigan very mad and upset, and I started becoming a very huge PJ Fleck fan. But that's nonetheless. That is, it's also his 13th year in coaching overall. Fleck is 58-39 at Minnesota, includes a 4-4 record versus main rival Wisconsin. And another nice stat for Fleck, he's 6-0 in bowl games as head coach of the Gophers. I truly don't understand the hate towards Fleck. His staff, on the other hand, has been and probably should be under scrutiny. They have refused over the past few seasons to take any risks or any chances. Nothing new tried and been way too vanilla. In many ways, Minnesota's 2024 season was tantalizing for Gophers for having made noticeable but not quite sufficient progress on a number of fronts that fans had been demanding of Coach Fleck's arguably too conservative coaching staff. Last year seemed to confirm that better results had always been available, and perhaps they had the opportunity for an even better season against what turned out to be a remarkably soft schedule if they'd gone farther. There's always a paradox in evaluating such a staff and making predictions for how they'll act in the future. The new dimension to assessing Fleck's performance in Minneapolis is the transition away from what was relatively recently a portal-phobic identity, a term I not too proudly coined on this show last year, which views itself as almost entirely a developmental program that fended off early departures and shunned large-scale portal additions. While last cycle, the portal was reserved for taking in a handful of obvious top-line players, in the most recent cycle, they've additionally seen far more of the depth and pipeline pieces take off without yet seeing the field, and they've much more aggressively used transfers to replace them. It remains to be seen how effectively the staff uses these roster management tools and evaluates players with desperate levels of college experience. Minnesota's biggest strength in 2025 is their running back room. Minnesota enters 2025 with a top 10 running back unit, led by the return of Darius Taylor and the addition of Marshall transfer A.J. Turner. Taylor ranks as the number 7 running back in college football, while Turner brings explosive efficiency after leading the nation in yards per carry, 8.3 last season. The biggest weakness for the Gophers this year is there enough to support the running game. Minnesota's new quarterback, redshirt freshman Drake Lindsey, enters 2025 with just 5 career pass attempts to his name. The Golden Gophers also lost 3 starters along the offensive line, including standout left tackle, not even going to try to pronounce it, Arowante Irsay, a second-round NFL draft pick. Notable transfer adds, like I already said, A.J. Turner from Marshall, Javon Tracy from Miami of Ohio, wide receiver, and another wide receiver, Logan Loa from UCLA. And notable transfer portal losses, offensive tackle Philip Daniels to Ohio State, and safety Coleman Bryson to North Carolina. Offensive tackle Martez Lewis to Northwestern. The bottom line here is Minnesota will once again lean on its trademark smash mouth style, built around a strong run game and disciplined defense. That formula alone should be enough to secure a bowl appearance, but redshirt freshman quarterback Drake Lindsey will ultimately determine how high the Golden Gophers can climb. The Gophers' key game is October 18th versus Nebraska. What you will find out here soon is I am high on the Cornhuskers. The Gophers should be riding high into the game at least 5-1, with their only loss being in Columbus against the Buckeyes. The game versus the Cornhuskers is very huge. The season where they win could be great. After the Nebraska game, they go to Iowa, back home against Michigan State, followed by a bye week, then 2 road games back-to-back, Oregon and Northwestern. Then close out the season against Wisconsin in the battle for Paul Bunyan's axe. The entire season is ahead of them after the Nebraska game. Can Lindsey hold up, or will the defense carry Minnesota to another bowl? The Gophers over-under is 5.5. I know I'm doing my over-unders on another episode, but I have this as an easy over, which that means fade me and take the under. Just saying. Gopher fans, does the Axe stay in Minneapolis? And is a bowl game a lock for the Gophers, or are they on the bubble? Vote now and let me know. Moving on, that very next team that I was just talking about, number 10, Nebraska. Last season went 7-6 overall and 3-6 in the Big Ten. Head coach Matt Rule is entering his third season at the helm of the Cornhuskers. He's 12-13 in his first two seasons in Lincoln. For reference, Matt Rule has done this before. When he was at Baylor, his first two seasons, he was 8-17. I bring this up because his Baylor Bears in year 3 went 11-3. Rule won the Big 12 Coach of the Year that year. Baylor went to the Big 12 championship game where they lost to Texas, in the Sugar Bowl where I believe they lost as well. What if Matt Rule does this again or something similar in Lincoln, Nebraska? It's not that far-fetched. Sophomore quarterback Dylan Raiola returns from a 2,800-yard throwing season and 13 touchdowns and 11 interceptions last year. Yes, I know. I am well aware that those are not great numbers, but kill me for thinking he will improve. I think he's going to improve a lot, honestly, and if the defense improves just a bit, this is going to be a very good football team and will surprise at least once this season. Offensively, last year, scored 23.5 points per game and gained 359 yards per game, 10th and 11th in the Big Ten. Defensively, gave up 19 points per game and 317 yards per game, 7th and 7th, basically middle of the road in the Big Ten last year. Nebraska's unit rankings, depth of rosters, 9th, coaching is 7th, offense 9th, defense 14th, quarterback 3rd, running back 13th, wide receiver tight end room 8th, offensive line 11th, defensive line 15th, linebackers 7th, secondary 11th, special teams 17th. Key game, October 4th versus Michigan. Last time the Wolverines came to Nebraska in 2023, Wolverines put it on the Cornhuskers, 47-7, I believe. I am sure that hasn't been forgotten. Nebraska could be heading into that game 3-0 and the hype train in full effect. Nebraska made a bowl last season for the first time since 2016. Dylan Raiola returns for his sophomore year after a solid freshman season. Expectations are high for a breakout year under new OC Dana Holgorsen. Yes, that Dana Holgorsen from West Virginia. All that man has done is run great offenses for the last, I can't even remember how long, at least 10 years. So we will see what that means for Raiola. And at the end of last season, I didn't even know this. Holgorsen was running the offense. Holgorsen was on the staff last year. He was a quarterback coach. Holgorsen took over play calling duties and Raiola took off at the end of last season. So it's going to be very interesting to see how you got the entire offseason to develop this offense and see where it's going to go. Holgorsen has a history of developing successful offenses, and fans hope he can unleash Raiola's potential. Last year, this could wind up being huge hire for Rule. If Holgorsen can unlock the key, which is what all the reports are saying out of Lincoln, the sky is the limit for this offense. It's not out of the question for the Huskers to win double-digit games this season with a schedule that features only 2 teams ranked in the preseason top 25, Michigan and Penn State. Only one of those is on the road. In fact, the Huskers go on the road just 4 times this entire season. With no Ohio State and Oregon, this schedule is very favorable. I will say Nebraska better be prepared week 1. They play at Arrowhead against Cincinnati on a Thursday evening, just one of those weird games. And weird things seem to happen with college games in Arrowhead. And I don't know why, but go back, look it up, and you'll find a bunch of weird scores and weird things that happen with college games in Arrowhead. But moving on, 3 starters return to the offensive line, and former Oklahoma linebacker Deshaun McCullough could be an all Big Ten defender along with former Georgia Southern defender Marquise Watson-Trent, who has averaged just short of 122 tackles per season each of the last 3 years. If Sire Wright blossoms into the kind of safety he showed himself capable of last year, with 2 interceptions, including one he returned for a house call, we could be talking about Nebraska reaching the college football playoff for the first time. In closing, Nebraska enters the season with the goal of competing for championships. Some predict the team could achieve a top 25 ranking and win double-digit games, including a bowl game. However, Dylan Raiola's continued development and the ability to find consistency on offense will be key. The team's ability to win close games, which was an issue in the past, will also be crucial. Nebraska's over-under is 7.5 wins. I have this as an over. Not only that, if this defense is better than my rankings, Nebraska may be going to Indianapolis or at least in the conversation. Cornhusker fans, can Raiola and Nebraska beat Michigan? Comment below. Do you believe, like me, that Nebraska is a playoff dark horse? Yes or no? Time will tell. I'm extremely high on Lincoln, Nebraska, and Matt Rule has proven to do it. He's proven to do it in the NFL. He's proven to do it at Temple. He's proven to do it at Baylor. Those are not easy places to win games. So time will tell, and we'll see. That's what we play the games for. Moving on to number 9, another team I'm very high on, the Washington Huskies. Washington last year went 6-7 overall and 4-5 in the Big Ten. Offensively, the Huskies gained 391 yards per game and scored 23 points per game. That ranked them 6th and 12th offensively in the Big Ten. Defensively, they gave up 328 yards per game and 24 points per game. That was 9th and 11th in the Big Ten. Washington's unit rankings, depth of roster 11th, coaching 12th, offense 8, defense 9, quarterback 6, running backs 5th, wide receiver, tight end 7, offensive line 13th, defensive line 11th, linebackers 9th, secondary 7th, special teams 18th. The Huskies are entering 2025 season with high expectations, particularly after a strong finish to the 24 season. The team is going through a rebuilding phase this season, not many returning starters coming back on either side of the ball. Where the main returners reside on this team is on the offense. Damon Williams returns at the most important position. He is only a sophomore, but just like the last sophomore I spoke of, Nebraska's Dylan Raiola, a big jump in production is expected for Williams. When we last saw Mr. Williams, all he was doing was torching Louisville in the Tony the Tiger Bowl, going 26 of 32 for 374 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. That bowl is also the Sun Bowl for those that want the real name of it. Also returning is senior running back Jonah Coleman after running for 1,200 yards last year and is considered one of the best in the country. Returning for the Huskies offense is junior Denzel Boston. He hauled in 63 catches for over 800 yards. So you can see there's a player at every level so far, and they got 3 of the 5 returning on the offensive line. So the offensive line should be stout. A couple of transfers on the O-line will help improve this unit from last year, a year after winning the Joe Moore Award for best offensive line in the country. This unit needs to improve, especially in the run game, where the Huskies only averaged 4.3 yards per carry last year. With Williams taking the next step and the offensive line getting better, I do see a vastly different offense for the Huskies this year. I see this as an explosive offense in the Big Ten. The other side of the ball will be better and more effective than last year. That's weird. I don't know why I wrote it that way. Anyways, both sides more explosive in the second year. Jed Fish. Ryan Walters is the new defensive coordinator after being fired at Purdue. That one surprised me when I read it. It was very interesting to me to find out where Ryan Walters went. I don't know why it took me so long to find that one out. But when my whole aspect of Washington changed when I found this out. The last time we saw Walters as a defensive coordinator, he was defensive coordinator for Illinois. And for those of you that don't remember, in 2022? Yes, 2022 was his last year at Illinois as defensive coordinator. All that Illinois team did was almost beat Ohio State, and then they darn near beat Michigan the week before the Ohio State game. And that was also the same game that Corum hurt his knee, and the rest was history for that season, as Ohio State fans well know. Yeah, so this, when I found this out, this changed the whole perspective for Washington for me, because I don't think he's a very good head coach, but I'm very high on him as a defensive coordinator. Like I said, some guys just aren't head coaches. I believe Walters is one of them. What did we know about Walter's Illinois defenses when he was there? Stout up front with space eaters that allow the linebackers to roam all over the field, and a ball hawking secondary. After Washington got some key transfers in on the defensive side of the ball, led by defensive back Jaden Kennedy from Ole Miss, I do believe this Huskies defense will look similar to those Illinois defenses that Walters coached his last few seasons as Illinois' defensive coordinator. The schedule is tough, though. They do have Ohio State coming to them, but it's Ohio State. That, again, doesn't make any sense. A road trip across the country to Maryland plus road trips to middle of the country to Wisconsin and Michigan make that road schedule difficult. And as always, the Huskies end the season with the Ducks. This year, that game is in Eugene, so that definitely isn't going to make things easy. But it is manageable. Key game is October 18th at Michigan. That's what, the third team in a row I've said their key game is Michigan. Looking forward, I could say. There's a world out there where the Huskies come into the game 5-1 with the only loss when Ohio State comes to town. Michigan will be in the middle of a difficult run in their schedule where they could be overlooking the Huskies a bit. I don't know. I'm just saying. I've seen crazier things happen. Can Fish and Williams revive Washington's 2023 magic, or is the schedule too brutal? Washington's over-under is 7.5. Husky fans, can Washington beat Oregon? Vote in the poll, yes or no. Moving on. Basically, what you're going to see is moving on from here to the end of this video. The rest of these teams I'm high on. Some are higher. I'm higher on than others, but especially this next one. Number 8 is USC. Last season, the Trojans went 7-6, 4-5 in the Big Ten. USC's unit rankings depth of roster is 8, coaching 5th, offense 6, defense 13th, quarterbacks 8th, running backs 8, wide receiver tight end 2nd, offensive line 10th, defensive line 10th, linebacker 16th, secondary 12th, special teams 11th. Offensively, they gained 437 yards per game, which was 2nd in the conference last year, and scored 30 points per game, which was 5th. Clearly, offense wasn't the problem last year, gaining the 2nd most yards and scoring the 5th in the league. The problem was and has been the entire time Lincoln Riley has been a head coach. See, everyone wants to tell you that this is just a USC problem. This goes back to his days in Oklahoma. It's not. Riley never had a defense rank higher than 40th when he was in Norman, Oklahoma. So Riley's defense last year was 58th in total defense in the nation. That side of the ball has to step up drastically if this team is going to improve. Last year, the Trojans' defense gave up 377 yards per game, 15th in the Big Ten, and they allowed 24 points per game, which was 12th. The Trojans enter the 2025 season aiming to improve after a challenging first season in the Big Ten. They are looking to build on their 7-6 record and address their struggles, especially on the road. The team has made additions through recruiting and the transfer portal, demonstrating a commitment to returning to the top of college football. The defense has got to create more pressure. It's hard to complain too much considering the 24 Trojan defense was the best in the Lincoln Riley era, but the pass rush was lacking and the tackles for loss weren't there at times. The 23 Trojans generated 85 tackles for loss, and last year's bunch came up with only 53. This year's bunch has the talent to crank up a whole lot more. USC led in all 5 Big Ten losses heading into the fourth quarter and lost all 5 by 1 score. Let me reiterate that one to you in case you didn't hear that one. USC going into the fourth quarter they lost 5 times in the Big Ten. They led all 5 of those games going into the fourth quarter. They lost all 5 of those games by 1 score. Probably the most brutal of which in Ann Arbor when Khalil Mullings ran for 84 yards all the way down to the 4-yard line. That's just a microcosm of the season. What happens if that flips? It's a great question. The offense is definitely going to be good enough. 9 starters return on offense, led by junior quarterback Jaden Maeva. He played in the final 3 regular season games and the bowl game, throwing for 1,200 yards, 72% passing, and 11 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. I believe a jump in production can happen here with a full season of development, and his top 2 targets are back from last year. Offensive line added starters from Purdue and Syracuse to add to an already deep offensive line room. As a 5, they should have over 70 starts combined, just not together. So this unit has to gel and gel fast. USC needs to take advantage of this schedule. It's a gift. I've already talked about so many times last week on the breakdowns of those teams and so many times moving forward this time. Big Ten did no teams really any favors, and now here we are. We're starting to get into big dogs with big names, and now shocking, these schedules start to get a whole hell of a lot easier. There's no Ohio State, Penn State, or Indiana on the schedule. Missing Minnesota is a good thing this year as well, and not having to play Rutgers, Washington, or Wisconsin will help. No, this isn't a good enough USC team to win the Big Ten title. I wrote that, but I don't truly believe it. Just FYI. But in Indiana got their sort of way. It has the talent to go 10-2 as long as it can own Los Angeles. The road games at Illinois, Notre Dame, and Oregon will all be a problem, but it's USC. If it's as good as it's supposed to be, it can win 2 of those. It can handle all the home games, including Michigan. But the Trojans will misfire somewhere, like against Michigan State, Iowa, or at Nebraska, and it'll come up just short of the college football dream. Still not comfortable on that. I think Indianapolis is in play, and I also think college football playoff is in play. And I have a bet on both of those. I know I'm not doing my previews for that yet, but there's a preview of the preview. I do have bets on both of those, them going to Indianapolis and making the college football playoff. But it'll definitely be a fun season deep into November. USC's over under is 7.5. I do believe this could be an over, and all I'll say is you may hear more about this on another episode. Got to come back to hear what I think. And that brings us to number 7, Iowa. Last season went 8-5. Overall, 6-3 in the Big Ten. Offensively, Iowa gained 329 yards per game, 14th in the Big Ten. That's a hell of an improvement for the Iowa Hawkeyes, especially over the last 4 years where they've been close to dead last or last. Scored 28 points per game, and that's 8th in the Big Ten. Another huge jump for this offense. Defensively, the Hawkeyes gave up 318 yards per game, 8th in the Big Ten, and they allowed 18 points per game, 5th in the Big Ten. Iowa's unit rankings, depth of roster, 7th, coaching 6th, offense 10th, defense 7th, quarterback 13th, running back 12, wide receiver, tight end room 16, offensive line 2nd, defensive line 3rd, linebackers 11th, secondary 8th, special teams 4th. Back in the 1980s and 1990s, there was a great pitcher named Brett Saberhagen. He's a French Hall of Fame candidate who won 2 Cy Youngs, a World Series, and had a great career. He's also forever known for a long stretch of rocking in odd number years and being blah in even number ones. Iowa football has become the Brett Saberhagen of the Big Ten, winning 10 games in 2019, 21, and 23, and failing to get past 8 victories in 22 and 24. Yes, there's an even number year not mentioned there, and I just don't act like it ever even happened. Moving on, Iowa has won 10 or more games in a season 11 times. 8 of them have been under Kirk Ferentz. Appearances in good bowl games have become the norm. The team committed the fewest penalties per game in all of college football. Only Air Force was flagged for fewer yards. There weren't problems with turnovers, and yet Iowa lost to UCLA and Michigan State last year. If last year's team beat the Bruins and Spartans, who both finished with losing seasons, it would have been a 10-win campaign. The Hawkeyes were good, but 5 of the 8 wins were against teams that ended up under 500. Another was against Illinois State from the FCS, and another came against a meh Nebraska squad. And that's been part of the formula for Iowa. It usually beats all of the teams it's supposed to. In the 10-4-23 season, Northwestern was the only FBS team Iowa beat that finished with more than 7 victories. In 21 and 19, Iowa won 10 games in both seasons, beat good Minnesota teams, and the other 18 games came against the meh. This year, Oregon will finish with more than 7 wins, Penn State, and so will a few other good teams on the Iowa slate. No, Iowa might not get to 10 wins without a little bit of help, but it's 2025. It's an odd year in so many ways. For a program overdue to make the college football playoff and put itself into a position to win every year, it might just Saberhagen its way into something special. In 2024, the Hawkeyes had more of a passing game. Now it has a quarterback to take it into hyperdrive. There was a passing game and offensive coordinator Tim Lester's attack all along. Who knew? Iowa will never throw the ball all over the yard, and only 4 teams threw for fewer yards, and 3 of them were service academies. Can you name the 4th one? Hint, they're in the Big Ten, and they haven't been named yet. More on that later. But the offense pushed through the ball. Nope. But the offense pushed past a 60% completion rate for the first time in well over a decade. The ground game was the second best in the Big Ten, and 360 points were the most since 2018. And now the passing game should be even stronger. Again, it wasn't exactly a high-octane attack, but it was more efficient and effective. But everyone who threw a pass is gone. On the plus side, Iowa upgraded at quarterback. Mark Grunuski won the 2023 Walter Payton Award as the best FCS player in America. And he closed out his South Dakota State career with over 10,000 passing yards and 93 scores. Auburn's Hank Brown was a nice backup to grab as well. It's still Iowa, and the Hawkeyes are still going to run the ball. Caleb Johnson is now a Pittsburgh Steeler, and the Hawkeyes have to replace the 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns that he scored. Kamari Moulton was second on the team with 473 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Jason Patterson was second with just over 300 yards and 2 scores. So a step up in that room is definitely needed. But Granuski can run as well. It's a stretch to say the Hawkeyes' offensive line got by on reputation, but it kind of did. And then it started blasting away last year and did a nice job in pass protection. There's some work to do, but the options are there to work with in fall camp around all Big Ten talents, Logan Jones at center and Jennings Dunker at tackle. There's a chance this is the deepest Iowa receiving core in a long time. Jacob Gill led the team with 35 catches for 411 yards and 2 scores. And the rest of the top wide receivers return. Gill is the number 1 guy, but the number 2 wideout, Reese Vanderzee, only caught 14 passes. Plus, adding in, it's Iowa, so the tight ends will shine. Addison Ostringa and Zach Ortwith will be involved more as well. On defense, the Hawkeyes have to replace a few superstars, but the D won't slip a bit. There were a few meltdowns, but the Iowa defense allowed 21 points or fewer in every game but 3. One was against Ohio State, another was the bowl loss to Missouri, and the third was a brain cramp against Michigan State. There are several key player losses, mostly at linebacker. The defensive style is still great, the parts are there, and this should once again be a top 20 defense. It would be nice if the pass rush could do more, but overall, a repeat of last year wouldn't be a bad thing. There's plenty of turnover up front. The ends should have a good rotation. The tackles are nice, but there must be more plays behind the line. Max Llewellyn and tackle Aaron Graves tied for second on the team with 8 tackles for loss, and Ethan Huckert led the way with 6.5 sacks. Tackle Jonah Pace came up with 4 sacks and 11 tackles for loss last year for Central Michigan, and Bryce Hawthorne, South Dakota State, was a big signing for the interior as well. The secondary is loaded with veterans as usual. The corner combination of TJ Hall and Deshaun Lee is solid, maybe even the best in the Big Ten. Lee made 42 tackles, but they don't have the jobs locked down. No matter what, they'll play big roles, but the Hawkeyes need more big plays from this position. The safeties will be fine, but it'll take a little bit. Xavier Nwampke is a good tackler at either safety spot, and then it gets interesting. Coen Intriger has a little experience and can pop. Jay Higgins and Nick Johnson combined for almost 900 career tackles, but they are gone now. How does the linebacker core replace all that production? But, as always, there are tackles to be had in the Iowa linebacking core. Jaden Harrell didn't get to see much time, but he should be great in place of Higgins in the middle. Carson Shair did a little more, and now he has to be the new Jackson. So what will happen in the Hawkeyes 2025 season? Iowa's keys to this season The run defense has to hold up better than it did last year. Losing to Ohio State wasn't a shocker, but Michigan State and UCLA rumbled for well over 5 yards per carry and for a combined 423 yards in their wins. Those were the three times the Hawkeyes were hit for more than 200 rushing yards. Since 2016, Iowa's 1-13 when giving up more than 200 yards on the ground. The Hawkeyes' key game, October 18th, they welcome in the Nittany Lions. If Iowa is just that good, it gets by the road trips to Iowa State and Wisconsin, survives the road games at USC and Nebraska, and Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon come to Iowa City. With those tough road dates to deal with, Iowa has to own Kinnick. Beating Indiana is a must, and getting by Oregon matters, but Penn State is the likely star of the season. So it's another Iowa team that should be rock solid in several areas, but this one has a better passing game to go along with the rest of the positives. But from the new linebackers to the lack of proven pass rush to the running backs who have to rise up and rock, there are a few more questions than normal in Iowa City. But not really. Iowa will still do Iowa things. They still have to play Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon, but all of them come to Iowa City. Minnesota and Michigan State do too. That means the toughest Big Ten road game is probably USC. Because of that, there isn't a game on the slate the Hawkeyes can't win, but outside of early battles against UAlbany and UMass, there isn't a game on the Hawkeyes that the Hawkeyes can't lose either. They could lose at Rutgers. They could lose at home to Michigan State. They could beat Penn State and or Oregon, and they could lose at Nebraska and against Minnesota. This won't. This may not be a 10-win season, but it'll be another strong campaign. The Hawkeyes over under 7.5. Does Granuski unlock Iowa's offense, or is the schedule too much? Iowa fans, does this team have a playoff shot? Answer and comment below. Well, folks, that is episode 2. We just tackled the mid-tier movers, Wisconsin's tough road, Minnesota's grit, Nebraska's breakout shot, Washington's rebuild and possible explosion into the playoff, and USC's star power, and of course, Iowa's new quarterback. These teams are bold-minded and hunting upsets in 2025. Next week, I'll be diving into the big dogs, teams 6 through 1, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State. The playoff contenders fighting for the Big Ten crown. Who's your upset pick from today to ruffle things up in the Big Ten this year? Hit the like and subscribe button, rate the show. I hear that helps. I don't know how. And join me next time. The Big Ten is heating up, folks. Only 2 weeks left, and then our long nightmare is over. And I am David Shaw, and this has been Shaw's 10 Talk. See you next time. Be nice to someone. Peace.